Welcome to Founder Stories, where we dive into the journeys of cybersecurity leaders, from first-time founders to industry veterans. Each story reveals the passion, resilience, and problem-solving spirit that drives innovation forward. Whether it's tackling financial challenges, conquering regulations, or building great company culture, these founders have insights and advice that inspire. Let's hear their stories. Howdy, folks, and welcome to Founder Stories TV, the only show that interviews cybersecurity founders and talks about their trials, tribulations, triumphs, troubles, and everything else that starts with the letter T. With us today is Parham Eftekhari. Now, Parham is the Executive Vice President at Cyber Risk Alliance Communities, and he is also the founder and head of the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technologies, which is a startup that's been around for 10 years now. He's going to tell us more about that. Parham, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Really excited for the conversation.
I am too. And folks, for those who don't know Parham, he has a lot of experience as a founder. He has seen the wins, the losses, and all points in between. Very storied, very knowledgeable on the subject. And I guess the first question I have for you, Parham, is you've seen it all. You've seen the wins and losses, and yet you still remain optimistic about becoming a founder. I want to know, your philosophy of go for it, don't be afraid. What's the driver there? What's the explanation behind that one?
Yeah, and again, thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I think one of the most important things, Ellen, you and I have talked about this many times over our friendship. Folks who have that inner drive to be a founder, it's either something that you have or you don't. I think first and foremost, and if you have that desire, that yearning, you look at folks who are entrepreneurs and it gets you excited, I say go for it. Because first of all, you don't want to have any regrets. You can always look back and say, I tried it, I gave it my best, it didn't work out. I think the worst thing one can do is look back and say, gosh, I wish I could have, I wish I did, what could it have been, right? So I think first and foremost, if you want to do it, obviously look at your life and your operating environments, financial risks you can take, but I say go for it. And I think one of the most important things is we actually just celebrated our 10-year anniversary at the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology. It's a 501c3 cybersecurity think tank that I had the privilege of founding about 10 years ago. And I had got the opportunity to make some remarks just on Friday at our gala at the St. Regis, and I shared this with the audience. I think the biggest thing you can do to be successful is to not constantly compare yourself to others that are out there. There's always going to be somebody that is doing it better, maybe achieving what you could define as success faster. Their fundraising is better. Their marketing looks better. Their events have more people, their websites are all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And there's a difference between benchmarking and learning from folks that you aspire to be like, then comparing yourself and then starting to get pessimistic and frustrated that you're not there yet. I think that you got to persevere. You have to look at where were you 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? Where am I today? Am I learning from my mistakes? And what am I doing at the institutional level and foundation level, processes, governance, personnel, messaging? Am I improving those things and building? And then next thing you know it's 10 years later and you're celebrating your 10-year anniversary with Chris Inglis and all these wonderful people at the St. Regis in DC, and you're scratching your head how, and it really just is about not giving up. I
literally just talked with Chris just a few days ago in New Orleans. He went straight from DC to New Orleans and back again. He's a great guy. You talk about these successes and comparing yourself with others, and you talk about the growth and kind of, measuring yourself in your own progress. You've had a personal sort of progress story where, if one were to Google your name, and they might find a BuzzFeed article, and I hope I'm not prying. I would really love you to share this because I know your story and I want others to hear this story because this one matters. This is the sort of thing folks can run into as founders, and I think you walked away with a valuable life lesson we could all learn from.
Absolutely. And so, first of all, I really believe in kindness, and even folks who may have not contributed the most positively to your life. It's not about speaking negatively on them. So please, anything I say right now, know I have agency over my life, over my decisions. I made some decisions and I learned from those, and I feel like I'm a better executive all these years later. Essentially, at the end of the day, I got into a situation where my integrity and the integrity of my business was questioned in a very public way. And it was serious enough where I actually, with tears, laying on my couch, wondering, is this a sign for me to leave cybersecurity? Do I got to leave the industry and start over? I was that terrified and afraid of what this could do for me. And after a lot of consulting with mentors, you got to have mentors, talk to people that have started businesses, talk to people that you trust that are in the industry, of course, that you're looking to serve and learn from. I had a lot of conversations, and this goes back to just not giving up. When I did all the analysis and calculus, I said, you know what? I can't go out like this. I cannot let somebody else write my story for me. And I gave myself a year, and I said, and I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even know what the KPI was. It wasn't a dollar amount in the bank or a certain number of sponsors or members. I just said, look, I'm going to give myself a year. And if in a year I'm still feeling like this, which is not very scientific, but I said, if I'm going to feel like this, then you know what, I didn't make it. And, you know, lesson learned for me. And I just set out to work. And it was hard, and it was difficult, and it was challenging. I had to do a lot of I had to confront a lot of my own mistakes with people. And what I found in that process is twofold. One, the reputation that you have ultimately trumps some of the short-term losses or challenges that you may experience. And in your mind, they are insurmountable. But time and time again, people said, look, yeah, we may need to slow down working with you right now for XYZ reason, but Parham, we know you've been doing this type of work for, at the time it was, 10, 12 years. We trust you. You made it, you had some bad things happen to you. We're going to be here for you when you get back on your feet. And I had so many people tell me that. And fast forward a year, I felt like I was in a better place. And the really interesting thing for me was that when I started talking to Cyber Risk Alliance in the context of aligning ICIT with CRA, we decided that the best way for us to partner was for me to continue to run ICIT as a separate entity and come here and help them develop, launch, and scale a national and soon to be international community for current and future cybersecurity leaders. And I asked my mentor, Malcolm Harkins, who introduced me, who's on the board. I said, Malcolm, how do I even bring this up? This is to me, a black mark on my resume. He said, what do you mean? He's like, one of the reasons I am recommending you for this job is not in spite of the fact that this happened, but it was because of how I saw you handle it. You didn't crumble under pressure. You owned it. You took accountability. You changed processes and you documented and communicated the right way. And you handled a crisis. And executive leadership, whether you're an entrepreneur or just, I feel like I'm an entrepreneur now in the context of a kind of more professional, private equity backed organization.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, and crisis management is something you do at different scale all day long. And once you go through it and you learn how to manage your and control your emotions and choose when to have those tears in the privacy of your own home and your couch versus how to present yourself on stage, talking to clients and the media. That's actually, I've learned, is a valued skill set that actually can be a asset for you. So it seems when you're in it that your life is over. But end of the day, again, going back to your first question, Alan, you just gotta believe. And it's almost like no is not an option. Sometimes I say, I don't even know how this is gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. And then you just figure it out. And I know that's not a very quantifiable or tactical thing to do, but a lot of it is just heart and determination.
Yeah, grit. I mean, and at the end of the day, and I know a little more about your story that, at the end of the day, there are things that transpired that weren't you or yours, and yet the way you got through it was by, to Malcolm's point, taking ownership. And you said, hey, some of this is me and mine, and it's my reputation on the line, and I'm going to address it, and I'm going to take charge, and I'm going to take control. And those skills are so applicable everywhere. I can't help but think, though, that this ties into sort of before you started that journey, before the negative happened, before the recovery happened, before this new positive emerged that actually got you accolades as opposed to, oh, he overcame the thing. No. He's better because of the thing, right? I mean, that's essentially what Malcolm was telling you, is you rose to the challenge dramatically well, right? Phoenix from the ashes, that whole kind of rebirth story. Prior to all this happening, the earlier negative events, prior to the recovery, prior to this new redemption and this new way of, I've got even more allies and partners and friends in the industry than I ever had before. At every one of those stages, there were things you were expecting to happen, and there were things that maybe just kind of happened that you weren't expecting. Like, walk me through kind of some of that, the whole way through. What were you predicting? What were you thinking? And what threw you, Yeah.
Well, I think, and one thing, first of all, with respect to taking ownership, end of the day, as an entrepreneur and as a business leader, I think that you have to take accountability and ownership. There's nothing worse than a leader that is very ready and willing and able to stand up on a stage or on a Zoom call and take all the positive feedback when things are going great.
Right.
But then when things are tough, to start pointing fingers, because ultimately, again, I'm an individual. I make my own decisions. And yes, there's sometimes when things are out of your control. I'm not talking about those things, but a lot of times, and I think it's okay to make a mistake. That is how you grow and learn. Either you learn from somebody else's mistake and you have the opportunity to learn from them, either just by observing or by having a conversation, knowing people, then sharing stories like I'm trying to do with whoever's listening right now, or you go through it yourself. But so ultimately, I think taking ownership and being accountable is so critical. To go back to your question, the thing that was in hindsight, what I thought was true that turned out to be true was that this is probably going to be even harder than I thought. And that turned out to be true. I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew that I was going to have challenges. It was going to be embarrassing. I was going to not, my personal income would go to all those things, right? I knew it. I didn't know maybe how hard it actually would be. I also didn't know, I couldn't fathom at the time that I would be sitting here today talking with you who's interested in my story, an entrepreneur, because at the time I was thinking, well, maybe this is the time I go and live out my dream and be a chef in the south of France, right? Like that's really that's where my mind was at, and to see where I am today. So I think the unexpected part of it was surviving versus thriving, and I hope this is not coming across as I have a lot of growth to do. I have a lot to learn. I'm learning every day from my managers, from my peers, from my team, from colleagues like you. And so it's not, you never stop learning, but I think there's a difference between I'm just going to survive and get through this versus no, I'm going to thrive. And the third aspect of it, of what I wasn't expecting or what worked out in a different way than I thought, is so much of it really does come down to how much confidence that you have in yourself. I just talked about it at the gala with a bunch of people. We all have, I think many of us have imposter syndrome. I've dealt with it forever. Who am I to be in a room with a Chris Inglis or any of these people, but sharing my opinion on cyber? Who the hell am I? I'm just a business guy. And so I think when you start to have more confidence, it's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about that I can contribute to the mission of whatever it is we're trying to accomplish and solve. And my contributions are valuable, and almost like trust people. When people are saying you got something to offer, take them at their word and start to believe in yourself. I think that is also, I didn't really appreciate how important that was, because I used to think of it as some people come across as, I think, very arrogant and cocky, and how good they are. You can be confident and feel good about what you do, but still be a humble, kind person, in my opinion.
One of the best pieces of praise I ever heard anyone give anyone, and I won't say who it was giving it to who it was, but they said, no matter the mission, they're willing to be the leader or the follower, and they are willing to be strategic or roll up sleeves. It doesn't matter. They're just focused on the mission. And to me, that's about the highest praise you can give anyone. And I think in the entrepreneurial context, especially as the leader, like, you're setting the example for everyone around you. Here you are leading this organization. All these people are looking up to you, whether, to your point, whether you've earned it or not, you're at the top, right? Earn it, right? Earn it and get that approach and be humble and be willing to dig in. And it's amazing how everyone around you will emulate that, right?
100%. At the gala, actually, Chris was one of our honorees with our, he was named our 24 Pioneer, and he framed it in the context of, he had a conversation with us around how leadership is vertical, right? And I've said it differently over the years. I've talked about pervasive leadership. Same thing. I think there's, I think it's important not to conflate somebody's set of responsibilities and what they're accountable for, and if they manage people, versus the fact that, and maybe they have a bigger megaphone and can, impact and influence a larger amount of people based on who they are and their followers and the size of the rooms they speak to. But in the day, all of us in an organization, whether this is your first day in your job right out of college, or whether you're on a board looking to do the post CISO thing, we're all leaders. And I think that mindset and that ethos it does start at the top, but once you almost enable everybody to view themselves as leaders and empower them to do so, it creates a really magical and transformative environment that I think is really fun to work in. And that's what I try to do to the best of my ability in any organization I have a chance to impact.
That's incredible. And you mentioned your whole, Malcolm's feedback about you are better for having gone through this and how you handled it. You're also setting a precedent for how others who report to you deal with their mistakes, right? Like radical ownership, transformative approach, rapid recovery, getting us to a better place. Like if you can build a culture where everyone does that, you can't lose. Like what a phenomenal culture. What a fantastic way to live and go to work every day, knowing it's safe, it's rewarding. I just you set such a great precedent there, man. It's just,
I'm trying, but I will say I think you have to be careful in when you do it. But I think I'm being vulnerable right now. I'm talking about
absolutely.
I don't love it. It wasn't like a highlight of my life when this happened, but I think it's important to share because hopefully other people can learn and not go through what I went through, right? If I can, that old adage, if I can change one person's life, right, it's a good thing. So hopefully somebody watching is going to be like, oh, I'm not going to make the same mistake, or I'm going to be, when something does happen to me, I'll feel stronger or more confident to get through it.
Yeah.
But I think also leaders, and particularly founders, the ones who've made it, yes, go take a victory lap and do what you need to do, but talk about the hard parts, because what everyone loves to say is, oh, wow, it's so awesome. You're an entrepreneur.
Look at my success.
You can take off on a Tuesday afternoon and go do whatever. It's like, yeah, but you don't know the number of Friday nights and all day Saturdays and all day Sundays and 80-hour weeks that I worked without getting paid to get to this point, right? And so talk about be vulnerable as an entrepreneur and let people into how hard it really is, not to scare them, but to make sure they understand that no, this is part of the process. You're gonna get bruised along the way, and that's why it feels so great when you start to have some of those successes.
The successes are well earned at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a random success; it's something you've earned.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about what you thought would happen and didn't, and what you didn't think would happen and did. Let's talk about what actually went down according to plan, right? I mean, you every good entrepreneur has a plan. You've several times now mentioned KPIs, KROs, these guys, you want to measure yourself and measure your progress. So here you are with your charts, your graphs, your goals, your objectives, your measurements, your KPIs, and you hit the ground running and off you go in entrepreneur land. What was that collision like?
Yeah, when I look back, when I look at the things that have gone well, kind of at a foundational level, that have been successes, when you document, and I'm not talking about, it doesn't have to be a complicated, big, process, create a strategic plan.
Yeah.
But recently, and I credit, what I've learned at CRA here a lot with this. I've gotten better at the beginning of the year, setting out my strategic goals, because entrepreneurs are, I may be on the other end, on the one end of the spectrum of being hyper and like shiny ball kind of guy, but we have ideas. That's why we're an entrepreneur. It's like we see opportunity everywhere. Yeah. And even within one business, you see opportunity every day. And it is I don't care how well researched you are, quite frankly, you got to pick a certain set of priorities. And until you finish those, do not try to do other things. I started and I was like, oh, this is going well enough. Oh, another opportunity. I'm going to start that one because maybe that'll help too.
Right.
And don't pick a lot. Don't pick 20 things you're going to do. Pick 4 or 5 things, get those things done well. And then, and this is the key, I think, for entrepreneurs to scale, you have to figure out how does this organization continue to deliver on whatever I set out to do, and I did it, it's going well. Now you need to move on to the next set of things,
right?
And
trust your word.
Transfer that institutional knowledge and document it into processes and resources and get people to do it so you can do the next thing, and then you grow and grow and grow. I think that to me is one of the biggest things that I've learned, and over the years, I've seen that the better I get at doing that, the more successful I've been in the context of growing a business, building my community, getting more revenue, growing my team. So I think the things that when you talk about like what works and maybe even better than being more important than I thought, it's just knowing what you want to do, being really clear on it, have all your decisions, be like, is this thing going to help me do one of these 5 things? If it's not, park it. Don't do it. or give it to a friend. Okay, I can't do this, but maybe you should do it for me, right? Whatever you want to do. I think that's really, really important because it's easy to get distracted and get excited. Just do the thing you want to do, get it done, and then move on to the next.
In the words of Star Wars, stay on target, Red Leader. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, listen, Parham, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom, your story, your past. I appreciate your humility. I think you've earned far more than you're taking credit for. I think you're doing a fantastic job in this industry. I totally appreciate your presence here. And I'm so glad to hear, you know, Chris Inglis, Malcolm Harkins, you're playing with the big players. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I hope our audience has learned from this. So Parham, thank you again.
Thank you for the opportunity. And to anyone watching, I'm on LinkedIn. If you ever have any questions, I'll do my best to answer. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Fantastic. For those of you who want to learn more about Parham or learn more about the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technologies, you can find out more at founderstories.tv/ICIT.